Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we're in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Innu, Cree, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Lynn Nesbitt, and I'm chairing today's panel. Joining me on the panel are Clay Purvis and Linda Schultz. Our assessor is Stephen Lobenstein, and our administrative personnel is Crystal Harland. We'll be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I'll confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony, followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony, followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the Board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. We'll be hearing items number 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6 on our docket today. Mrs. Harland, please affirm the assessor's and applicant's testimony.
Yes, Madam Chair. Mr. Assessor, would you please state your full name?
Stephen Lobenstein.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, would you please state your full name?
Rocky Neufeld.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
I have an applicant in the room.
Yes,
Can the applicant stay or does the applicant need to leave?
the applicant can stay if he wishes to stay.
All right, thank you.
Okay, item number 1. This is file number 25-62, 125 Meridian Drive. Mr. Neufeld, this is an appeal of the assessed value of the property.
That's correct.
Okay, Mr. Lobenstein, you may begin with your evidence, please.
Sure. The roll number is 14100018300, 125 Meridian Drive. We have an assessed value of $823,000. That's an assessed value of land value. This is a supplementary hearing today, or a supplementary appeal, because there was a building that was on this property but was demolished and removed. So we're just looking at land value today. Again, moving down to my property descriptions, you can see we have a land area of 195,810 square feet. The zoning is M2 manufacturing. So moving down to my page 2, I will skip past that. Actually, we'll go to my page 3. And we can see the land value here. So we have 195,810 square feet. We have a rate of $4.20 that we're applying for an actual land value of $823,000. Moving down, you can see the zoning. There's the definition we have for the zoning. The district is intended to provide for light manufacturing, processing, self-storage, wholesale, and distribution operations with some limited outdoor operation storage. So that's the M2 zoning. Moving further down, so we can see on my page 4, we can see a picture of the property. The only recent picture we have of the property is when the building was on it. That has since been demolished, so it is just the land only. Again, you can see another picture on page 5. This is an interesting building because it actually traversed across 2 roll numbers. The one we're looking at today is the one we're focusing on at 125 there. And you can see on page 5, there's another picture of the property. Moving down to my page 6, I got 10 comparable land sales. So they're all across the city, but there are some in similar locations. They're all a very similar square footage to the subject property. And you can see that comparable ones, Hyde, it's on Oak Point Highway. It's fairly close to the subject property. It's 229,000 square feet. Comparable 2 is in the St. Boniface area, same with comparable 3 and 4. Comparable 5 is fairly close to the subject property. It's in Ingsbrook Drive, North Inkster Industrial. Comparable 6 is in the St. Boniface, same with comparable 7. Comparable 8 is on Logan. It's in fairly close proximity to the subject property. Comparable 9 is on Fief. It's in the Inkster Industrial Park, not too far from the subject property, and comparable 10 is on Mission. Again, they're all very similar square footage to the property, and they all have ranges from as low as $2.28 a square foot all the way up to I believe it is $5. Sorry, give me a second here. $6.57 a square foot. So they sort of bracket our value of $4.20 a square foot. Going through my pages, on my page 7, you can see a picture of comparable 1 on Hyde, comparable 2 on Black Diamond, comparable 3 and 4 are also in the St. Boniface Industrial Park. Comparable 5 is the Ingsbrook property that's close to the subject property. Comparable 6 on page 10 is on Chamomile Cis in the St. Boniface Industrial Park. Same with comparable 7. Comparable 11 is the Notre Dame, sorry, that's page 11. And my comparable 8 is the one on Logan. And then there's comparable 9 and 10 as well to finish off on Mission. So we can see that the comparable properties are very similar in size to the subject property. And we feel the value of $823,000 should be confirmed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Neufeld, do you have any questions?
Oh, sorry, I was looking for my screen. Okay. Yeah, I do. I was just looking at, first of all, okay, sorry about that. I was just looking at one of your comps online here. The servicing status of the subject, do you have this in here?
On my page 4, you can see the lines. Sorry, I should have mentioned that, the lines rolling in. So within our system, we're showing that there is water and sewer lines that run along the subject properties roads there.
So there are lines there, but I mean the status of it today, like your city website on this property indicates no sewer, correct?
My understanding is that this is what I have for our city here. So I know that there are city lines that run along the roads that can be tied into. I have on here of showing that it is tied into, but it's my understanding that they aren't able to use these lines. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm getting at. There's a difference between being located there and being approved for hookup, right?
Sure. I mean, I'm not too sure on the approval part of it. All I know is that the lines do exist there.
Are you suggesting to the board that it's a simple matter of filling out a form and getting hooked up?
I don't know the process.
Okay, good. And you're showing a picture here of it on the page, I don't know, you had a bunch of overhead pictures. For example, page 4, the one you're mentioning. Now that building is gone, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Do you know why it was demolished?
Not particularly. I knew that it was vacant and wasn't being used. There was some talk about it being built without permits. I'm not too sure about that, but
Okay. And are you familiar at all with the city's policy on complete communities and servicing of new lots?
no, I'm not.
Okay. The comparables that you've drawn on, do you know any of their history in terms of you've got a few where you've listed as no sewer, no water. Do you know if that is a physical issue or a planning issue?
All I know, again, similar to this subject properties, they don't have any sewer or water lines to tie into. The city hasn't put the services there for them to do that.
Okay. And of your comparables, fair to say that I think only 3 are close to the subject, correct? I'm
Yeah,
just looking at number 1, 5, and 8.
Yeah,
I think
due to the size of the subject property and somewhat the scarcity of industrial land within the city, I expanded my search out of the subject area.
and of the ones that are in the area, they're all older sales, are they not?
Yeah, there's a range in sales here that from 2016 all the way up to 2022 within the 2013, yeah, 2016. Sure, yeah, they're older sales. That's fair.
And of the ones in the area, fair to say that the newest sale, uh, the newest sale produced the lowest sale price? And I'm looking at number 8.
Oh, the Logan one. Yeah, it's a 2019 for 228. It's also an oddly shaped one where there's, the majority of it's at the back, but yeah, sure. And also, well, the one on Hyde though, which is a 2016 sale, sold for $6.57, and it doesn't have water or sewer. So
Yeah, I'm just asking a question about the time, and of course, market conditions change, right?
sure.
You're not expecting the market to be the same in, say, 2013 as it was in 2019, correct?
Yeah, market conditions definitely change.
And in 2013, for example, okay, well, I'm going to back this up. Are you familiar with the servicing issues confronting the Centerport lands?
Well, I mean, we can talk about the Centerport lands, but they're not within the city.
No, I understand, but I'm wondering if, because you're looking at value in the city and the impact of Centerport is my question. You're aware of the issues, that the time delay from 2008 till 2019 before they finally got third reading of their servicing?
No, I'm not exactly aware on all the
Okay.
issues within Centerport.
So if you have 6,000 acres of land located right across the highway from the subject property, who took until 2019 before they were approved for servicing, do you think that might have an impact on the land across the street?
I mean, there's other issues too. I mean, I guess that could be an issue. There's also a high scarcity of industrial land within the city of Winnipeg as well. So,
But that is until third reading of the arm of Rosser's servicing bill on Centerport, correct? When there became a glut of industrial land. I'm just, if you're not aware of it, that's fine. And I know I'm making a statement here, but we have this myopic vision that we only care about the city of Winnipeg instead of the influence of the neighbor. And
Sure. I would say I haven't really noticed Centerport operations affecting city land in terms of value.
okay. I think that's it for my questions. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neufeld. Mr. Purvis, questions for the assessor?
But I think my questions have been addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schultz.
Just one question. So on your comparable number 8, based on the $2.28 square foot, would it have a detrimental value because it's considerably lower than what we're seeing on the subject property because of the contamination?
Yeah, I mean, the contamination could be partially an issue with it. That's probably why it's sold for slightly lower.
Yeah.
What that contamination is, I haven't had a chance to really look at yet, but there probably would need some remediation.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you very much. Just back to the servicing. You indicated water and sewer lines are to the property, but they aren't able to be used. Those were your words, aren't able to be used. Why is that?
It was my understanding that they, this is from Mr. Neufeld when we spoke, that they weren't able, they weren't able to connect to the city services. I guess the city had stopped them from connecting it. So I'm not too sure on all the details on that. From my perspective, though, just when I'm looking at it, the city services are built up in that area. Whether it's something to do with the owner or if a new owner could connect, I'm not too sure. If it had something to do with like the amount of usage within the area that they couldn't connect, I'm not too sure. But all I know is the city services were connected to the roads and they do have the ability to connect to them. Or
They have the physical ability to connect to them.
The physical, yeah.
But we don't know if there's other barriers to the connection, correct? Or you don't know?
I don't know.
Okay, I'm sure we'll hear from Mr. Neufeld on that. Does this property have contamination to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay.
I mean, I will say like industrial properties, it's not uncommon for them to have some contamination.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. To your knowledge, it's not on a registry or?
I don't know.
Okay. Okay, and you indicated that 3 of these comparables were nearby. Others are in other industrial parks across the city.
Due to the size of the subject property and again, scarcity of industrial land, I broadened my search out across Winnipeg.
Okay. Is it the same owner that owns the property or the building was on the other half? Same owner?
Yeah, that's actually, I'm not, I mean, the building's gone now. I'm not too sure if it was the same owner or not. I can look into that. We have, looks like it was the same owner. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much for that. Okay, that's all my questions. Mr. Neufeld.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm just looking through and I failed to put a really good location map on for you, just to show where it sits in this, in the Inksbrook industrial area. I'm going to give you a bit of background first, and some of it is in here, and I've referenced it, but not in detail. Inksbrook Industrial began its development around 1996, and the person who did it was a plumbing contractor who was at the corner of Brookside and Inkster, and he had 3 sections of land. So 3 sections is about 1,950 acres. No, 640, 1,920 acres. of land and that he had under his control or under contract. And his idea was to develop this and parcel it off. And it did go bankrupt at one point, and then the assets were purchased by Sunex, who subsequently sold them to Bentall. So, but services were brought in, and I can speak of this firsthand because I represented the first tenant, the first purchaser of land in this area, which was Fort Garry Industries. So the road called Commercial from King Edward is where the services had to come from. There was not capacity on Brookside. There were a few sites that were hooked up on Brookside, and they were for their specific location only. You could not tap into it. So the assessor's talking about the lines. I do not dispute that there are lines on it, but by the bylaw that created the subdivision, the capacity had to come from King Edward, which is about 1.5 miles to the east. So that work was done by the original contractor, and if you want to hook up, you have to hook up to that, and there is a cost. That's the background on it. So the lines the assessor brought forward to are Maple Leaf's lines. Maple Leaf Construction, private line, no capacity for other use. And in the past, the owner of this property made a private arrangement to tap into Maple Leaf's lines. It was irrelevant because he never used them. When the building was up, it has never been occupied. It was built, and it was squatters in there, we'll call them. There was never a water hookup. There was never a sewer pump out. When I was in there, which was last summer, it was using the what's the right way to call it? The pail method, if you know what that euphemism means for servicing. So as it stands today, they have to get permission to hook in, number one. Number two, they have to pay, at the rack rate before was $25,000 an acre. So with their entire development, they'd have about 7 or 8 acres. But that was the 1999 price. And I don't know what Bentall will charge for it today. They paid for it, they own it. Everyone has to compensate them for using it. But that is just one part of the problem, because in servicing, there are obviously 3 issues. Number one, is there physical capacity, and can it be delivered? And number two, will you get legal permission to do it? Can you anticipate it, that it's going to happen? And number 3 is, do you know when it's going to happen? We fall into the last category, and give you a background on this. This has been well known in the community, and I say the community being people in real estate who are trying to do development in this area, about the need for water and sewer. There's this interesting article on page 17 about the city had done a study in 2019 that they're going to run out of serviced industrial land, and that is true. And going on to the meat of it, on page the city's complete communities is a very telling point on this, and I've forgotten what page I put this on. Oh, here we go, page 35. So this is a city document, and it talks about the servicing. Number one is that you will not get permission to build unless you are fully serviced. Number two is there's no guarantee that you'll get services, because in the second paragraph on page 35, given the context of the various servicing standards available throughout Winnipeg, there are exceptions to new developments being supported by a full range of municipal services. So you can get one, but that's under these 3 categories. So expansion, permitted use from one to another, and infill. and then you can assume you're going to get services. But there is, and the policy is on page 36. Essentially, and I was looking for the quotation. This document states that there is no guarantee you're going to get servicing on it. And on some further pages, we have some examples of where a new development was refused servicing because the city doesn't have the capability. And on page 40 begins the story of one development on Pembina Highway, denied servicing. And I have another one here at 677 St. Anne's, and I'm sorry I can't find it, where they were required to do a study to determine whether or not there was capacity, but in the end there was no capacity. And this was a condominium plan that had been approved 20 years ago. Now that's sitting without servicing because you can't get it. The other one I spoke of, beginning on page 42, is the Centerport Canada. I'm showing you assessments, not to compare value, but to outline the issue of servicing. These are in the city of Winnipeg. So the dividing line between Winnipeg and Rosser is right about at the end of, I think it's the 4 mile mark from the Assiniboine River, and then Rosser starts. So there is no capacity on the Winnipeg side for services because the lines don't have the capability, but also because the city doesn't have the capability now. And it's a very odd coincidence. I drove past the sewage treatment plant on Main Street and saw the work that they're doing on it. So yes, the city looks like they're trying to improve their capabilities to service the area. But if they don't have it, they won't let you build and develop. Now, what happened in Rosser was entirely different, but it impacted the values across the street in Winnipeg. In that funding was approved in 2008 for the infrastructure, but the hang-up was they couldn't get water in their case. Sewer, the city had agreed to do a service contract with them for sewage, which then got put on hold because of capacity later on. And then the water took until 2019 to solve. And at that point, they got an allocation of water from the Assiniboine River. They bought from the RM of McDonald, their potential, and they piped it in to bring water. When that assent was assigned in the third reading of RM of Rosser, which is 2019, all the lands became marketable. So the lands across the street no longer marketable. Winnipeg lands had scarcity of water, question marks on it, question marks on service, and Rosser came in with better roads and serviced land, and better still, a planning district outside the city of Winnipeg that had some different ideas on how much servicing level was required. And that's the point I was bringing with the assessor's sales, that we all knew in the business that when Rosser got their approval, their prices were going to go up because they have better infrastructure, better roads to what the truckers want, and Winnipeg's going to suffer. That's what we see in his evidence. Now, by the way, I should tell you something, that I'm not just giving you a narrative of stuff I read in the news. I've been involved, as I said, on the Inksbrook this was my first job in 1996 at development. My first job in real estate, and as far as the services go, the properties you're looking on page 42, I represented most of them in the expropriation hearings. Now, what ended up being done in those lands in Centerport that could not be serviced is these are ones where Qualico bought. And I did not search the titles. I know what they paid for them because I was in the negotiating room with Qualico and landowners as they were trying to buy all this land. They paid $50,000 an acre. And the funniest part, I always remember it, is that the guy doing it said cash. It's funny when you hear people say that, because what else would it be? But 1270 Sturgeon Road, my client, we met with Qualico. The offer was 50. He turned it down. The rest of these ones took the offer. And you can see the picture on page 45. These are the City of Winnipeg lands that were purchased by Qualico. Now, their goal is to put a residential development up here, mixed commercial and residential and they can do that south of Centerport Way. Now, taking us back to other sales, there were a couple on page 2 and 3 that I was looking at, and the difficulty of these lands to find is that you need to find some with the same legal issues. Now, numbers 2 and 1 and 2 do not have the servicing. You'll notice I have the one that the assessor mentioned at 2185 Logan, and my understanding is that the servicing hasn't been approved on it. And number 2, which is on a Meridian, which is a couple hundred feet away from the subject, was purchased as a larger potential for development, again without any service guarantees. Quickly addressing the concept of economy of scale. The economy of scale must be proven, not just estimated, because in most real estate, the economy of scale operates in reverse for development side. Bigger the development, the lower your costs per acre are, because a lot of the costs are single costs, such as your planning and your design and your legal and your applications. And there's an economy to having a road down the middle of your land instead of one property share paying for his own road. So a bigger is more desirable. You'll pay more for a more desirable piece that you can make more money on. The simplest analogy I can give you on the economy of scale is a farm. 40-acre farms are worth less per acre than 160-acre farms, because you need to get your machinery, your big machinery on site. The same concept follows through in real estate on the development side. The only time you're going to see an economy of scale is, let's say you build 20 houses and one guy offers to buy 10. Then he'll probably get a discount. But that's not, right now you need, the bigger you are, the more options you have to develop, in which case your yield is going to be better and you'll make more money. That's so I have no issues with 285 Meridian on that basis. And the last one was 2700 King Edward, which is I have to say this, that I made a commission on that sale. They offered it for sale 10 years before it was sold, and it went through a number of different people, but I provided the lead 15 years ago. And all of a sudden in 2019, someone says, oh yeah, here's your referral fee. But that was an acreage that at the time of the first deal was undeveloped. And then it was purchased not for industrial use, but purchased for future residential use, because the precinct plan on that section of land in the original 1920 acres, that's on my page 3, marked by the 3. That was originally Winnipeg has precinct plans. This is a future industrial use. So your next appellant, by the way, Terracon, got it changed to a mixed use, and they went a lot of residential, and that's when all those started to sell. And they got the servicing from King Edward, which is right beside it, which is also leading up to our problem about, is there still capacity to service our subject property? And as a result, what we did is we looked at many things. In my mind, and of course our office's mind, what we found most compelling were the lands, the orphan lands in Centerport and St. Boniface that can't get servicing. And they're all, and I'm not comparing assessments. I was involved and interviewed all the participants. A value of 30,000 an acre until such time as they get servicing. And this is what the goal here would be, there's nothing wrong with the assessor's value if you will get that approval that when you comes time to develop, we will have servicing for you. Right now, the answer is no. An application has been made. No answer has been given, but if it came through and they said, yes, we'll give you servicing, then the city should issue a supplemental. Right now, we have to consider it unserviced with no possibility. They are trying to, and it's on a holding zone. Page 4, there was some discussion on environmental, and you know, I somewhat agree with the assessor. Lots of these places have issues, and you can see from the map of this that there's on this page there are 8 registrations on file for environmental. Now, the green and the yellow triangle doesn't mean anything. It just means that environment hasn't finished their paperwork. This is an electronic conversion issue, not a fact of oh, they were bad, now they're good, because they never get good. You never get cured. Now, when I first worked in this in 1996, this is what we found, and I couldn't find a copy of the phase 2 that was done for the development, but there's an abandoned rail line, and when the rail line was abandoned, they buried the wood underground, and that all had to be dug up. There was a mink farm, believe it or not, and for some reason the mink farm had a contaminant associated with it, and that was located. I think the exact location was on where Meridian is right now, and I don't even think it's marked down, but we just knew about it because we did the work in '96, and they had testing and drilling. And then the major concern there is the seepage from other sites. So if you look at the Maple Leaf paving plant, that would be they'd be impacted by potential for seepage from there. Now, if you're going to open up a trucking business and someone says it's contaminated, honestly, you would say, so what? What does it matter to me? But it does, because of one real big problem is financing. And that's another business that I do a lot of work in. So if you bring in a property that's got a registration on it or has potential for being contaminated, you get lower ratio lending, higher interest rates, and shorter amortization periods. It works out to, on the cap rate, today's cap rate market, probably 1 1/3 to 1.5 points higher for that, because of your inability to get enough money out of the bank so you put in less equity of your own. And that's a feature that we're never going to see any difference of, because the banks are sitting in their towers in Toronto, and someone says, we've got contaminated land in Manitoba. Well, we're going to apply our standards to them. So not, you know, we got to lower our exposure to risk. And so you get a higher borrowing rate and you got a higher cap rate. And that's why the land gets devalued when there's contamination nearby. No shortage of it here. Across the street is an oil storage facility, a bulk oil storage facility. That's probably not going to impact the subject. But the former uses I spoke of, the registrations on these are in the files of Manitoba Environment, and like I said, they do not go away. So our value is, and be clear on the value, is that until such time as we know which way it's going to go, the land, you can't value land on an assumption, especially for taxes, on the assumption you're going to get services. And that's what's the theoretical sticking point here. You do not value assumptions. You value what is. What is no servicing. If this changes next week, next month, 5 years from now, I agree, nothing wrong with the assessor's value. But until such time as we have confirmation that it will be serviced upon request, it's a hold, a long-term hold. And I told you what Qualico pays, 50 grand an acre for future residential use. The other ones were that we looked at were in St. Boniface, 30,000 an acre for future industrial use, if and when servicing comes on. And the likelihood of approving an unserviced site, as you can see from the standards, from the city's statement, is very, very low. Anyway, that's my presentation. Oh, one last thing. Yeah, the demolition was the city forced closure of the building, because not only did they not have close their building permits or have inspection, they never had an occupancy permit, and the construction was subpar and it failed in many areas. There was no choice in the matter. And after my client bought it on bankruptcy sale and knew he had to demolish the buildings. That's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neufeld. Mr. Lobenstein, questions for Mr. Neufeld?
I really only have one question. Just like specifically this property. So you mentioned like they couldn't get an occupancy permit. They built it, they couldn't complete their permits, or they built it without permits. Like, would this be the reason why they're not getting city services? Because they have the infrastructure in there, but they never actually got an occupancy permit. Is this just like, is this an issue just specific for this property?
They never had servicing approved. That was one of the factors. There was I thought I put it in here, but there was well, I did put it in here, sorry. There's the complete reasoning for it on page 24. And it's the caveat taken out by the city. Let's see if there's a description of it. Oh, here, yeah, on page 28 is the description of the deficiencies.
So
unsafe conditions, no permits, no life safety systems. So when you say no life safety systems, that means no sprinklers, and they were required to have sprinklers. They don't have sprinklers because they don't have water.
So you're stating, so I just want to get this straight. So you're stating that they never had approval to hook up for services, but they went ahead and built the building anyways.
If you know who did it, you wouldn't find it unremarkable. And I don't want to say anything negative about other people, but this particular firm has done many jobs like this, and that was their risk they took.
So you're saying no other developer could come in here and build on this property. They would be rejected from service.
Well, first of all, we'll start from the beginning that no one would ever reuse this building because the cost to fix it is more than the cost new.
Oh, sorry, I'm not talking about the building. We know the building's gone. I'm just talking about it itself.
So now the person to buy it now is it's being a potential that was they were looking at, and it's an opportunity, and for that you pay an opportunity cost. Now their acquisition of it was post reference. I know what the number is, but they took over an existing mortgage on very good terms, so it was not a transaction anyone's going to put any weight on, which is why we haven't even tried to sneak it in, because I know it's no good to use lots of reasons. They bought it for future potential, and if it means paying cheap, short-term hold, and if they can get it done in 5 years, maybe the cities that plant on Main Street will have capacity by then, and they'll get approval, and everything's wonderful.
Yeah, those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lobenstein. Ms. Schultz, questions?
No further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Purvis.
I believe my questions have been more than amply answered by Mr. Neufeld's very thorough presentation.
Thank you very much. So
And
just
I am aware of who used to own that building, Mr. Neufeld, and yes, he is beyond it there.
Well, we won't say anything.
Yeah, we don't need to go there.
He has a very different method of doing business. That's all we can say, right?
Yeah. Okay, so just following up on the question from the assessor. What came first? Because in my mind, it's still not clear.
Okay,
The lack of approval for water or building on spec. But did he build on spec, assuming he was going to get water and then couldn't get approval? Or was there, like, what came first?
as near as I can piece together, that he began building on spec and had a memorandum of understanding from Maple Leaf to piggyback their system based on a very low capacity servicing, which would be essentially toilets and sinks, no sprinkler, no other needs for sewer water. And when Maple Leaf, and again, this is hearsay, so I just remember but when that approval went through and Maple Leaf agreed to it, there was no downside for them because they're not in control of what this guy does if he doesn't carry on. And then what happened is that subsequently the lands to the east of Maple Leaf became were being brought to the market with servicing, and Maple Leaf no longer wanted to provide services. This is what I was told, but again,
Okay.
I don't. When I look through the building, I sort of know what I'm doing. There were never any services hooked up.
What about, could services, I mean, we have two properties side by side owned by the same person, or the same, you know what I mean, same owner. The building straddles both. The building's gone, but whatever. Could servicing have been brought in through that other?
I'm speaking of them jointly. They were always considered in the same context. Both pieces of property were as impacted. We didn't bother. That this is a supplemental, and when we brought in the last one, there was a land value on it. It's a smaller piece, and we were waiting for the demolition permit to come through and then examine it, whether or not we should appeal the supplemental.
Okay.
City never issued a supplemental for the adjoining land. You can see the buildings on both.
Mm-hmm.
But on their assessment records, it was always shown as only being on this site. So we never got a chance at the supplemental, but that's fine. I mean, it's what happens. We always knew that a supplemental was coming through, and we just missed they didn't give us the opportunity to appeal it.
And in this case, because I don't have a map, so I don't actually see how everything is situated. There's no way or is there a way for this property to bring in services from another municipality?
Another municipality, no, but as I said, the services for the appropriate civic approval, the services will have to come in. Best map is page 3, and on page 3, where I don't know if you can locate King Edward is not marked, but if you see where Garton Avenue is on the right side, so right above that is a little dirt path. Now that's the street that the services come through. So the underground and they come up and go westward, and then from there they branch off to different areas. So the one where the red mark is, their services come down the little curved road, and then they split the lot line and service all the buildings in there. And that's where Tormont's in there, and Peterbilt, and a couple other places. The one on Inkster Boulevard is my client, Fort Garry. So his line comes in right beside on Haggart, where it came through, and that straddles the lot line there. And the rest of them spider off under where number 2 is marked at that intersection, and they go north. Then that's the first line, and now the second one, which I think ended up being put through, is the roadway that's above Inkster Garden that goes goes westward. But that land is now all future residential and mixed use. So the sale mark number 2 will likely have services brought up to its door, but then it's a question of whether or not it gets approved. So the subject is, I believe it's the land that's right beside the number 2 sale. So these were, it's how do I say this? It's a violation of standards for, say, a professional to say we assume you're getting services when we don't know. We just don't know. You can't value it on something you don't know. In my business, say appraisal business, we would often say, okay, we'll make an extraordinary assumption you're getting it. Therefore, the value is based on an extraordinary assumption. But you don't do that for taxation because you don't value assumptions. You value what you can see. And that's why if it comes in, great. If it doesn't, it's holding land.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, I was getting more into other things there. But.
No, that's okay. You've answered my question. Does anybody have rebuttal evidence?
I have no rebuttal.
Okay. Mr. Neufeld, no rebuttal?
No, I
Okay.
just a very short
Thank
statement.
you. Okay, Mr. Lobenstein, summation?
I have no summation.
Mr. Neufeld.
And again, I know the concept of dealing with other assessments is not what I'm bringing up. What I'm bringing up is the way that this has been treated in other appeals. And the one I mentioned on page 40, which is 3270 Pembina Highway, the board was faced with the same issue. Services became unavailable. The board in that case, and the assessor agreed, by the way, to put a value on it on the basis of it's in a holding pattern now, and everybody understood it. And until such time as the problem is resolved, it'll stay in a holding pattern. It's the same issue here. And in that case, again, I'm not comparing assessments, but that's good land on Pembina Highway and the river. We agreed at 50,000 an acre until such time as the services became available. And that's a good decision reached by both parties, and understanding the concepts at stake here. I think the subject is in the same boat. And as I said, if the assessor come forward and said, I got an approval letter for you, you're getting your servicing, not only will we not have a fight, the owner would be thrilled to death because he could develop.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Neufeld. That will conclude item number 1. All right, we'll move forward in our docket. The next property we're dealing with is 1197 Keniston Boulevard. We have 2 appeals, one for the 2024 and one for the 2025. So let's deal with item number 4 first, which is an appeal of the 2024. And then it'll sort of be in a better order for us. And then hopefully the 2025 will be a little bit shorter. So let's start with file number 25-43, 1197 Keniston Boulevard. Mr. Lobenstein.
Sure. We have a roll number of 10006339200, 1197 Keniston Boulevard. The roll years for 2024 with a reference period of April 1st, 2021. We have an assessed value of $7,371,000. Moving on to my property descriptions, we have an effective year built of 2024. There is for some reason, we have an actual year built from 2001 to 2024. This was a previous roll number. I think just a number got left on there, didn't get deleted, but we have an effective year of 2024. We have wall heights ranging from 9 to 12 feet. We have a construction class of S metal frame, and the zoning is M3 manufacturing for heavy manufacturing. The total land area is 653,386 square feet. We have a plan area of 60,500 75 square feet, and that's the same for the gross floor and leasable area. The land to plan of 10.79. Moving down, so for request for information, this is a new building, so there is no income and expense information. So we have none of that, which is understandable. Moving on to my page 3, you can see the map. You can see where it's located on Kensington, kind of behind IKEA there. It was the old cement plant that used to be there that was recently demolished. Further down, you can see pictures on page 4. So you can see the building that has been constructed there. That's the building we're looking at today. It looks like they are preparing to build a second structure eventually, but that is not completed yet. And then on my page 5, you can see a few more angles. This is a self-storage building where they have individual self-storage units. Some are heated, some are unheated, where people can bring their, their possessions and store them there. So looking at my page 6, you can see some comparables. The way we're valuing this property is in basically 3 or 4 different segments. The first is just like the office area, which is 500 and 900 square feet. So you can see we have some comparables of lower square footage from 350 square feet all the way up to 951 square feet. You can see the wall heights, the years built, and the rents that range from like $14 up to $33. And then, of course, we have 2 other sections of this property. We have one that's 27,000 square feet and one that's 32,000 square feet. So on my page 6, you can see that we're looking at similar size properties ranging from 28,000 square feet. Has a 29,000 square feet as a high and 15,000 square feet as a low. And these rents range from $7.48 a square foot up to $11.50 a square foot. So moving down to my income page on page 7, we've got a better understanding of how we've broken up the square footage here. We have the 2 smaller areas for the office areas and then the 2 larger areas. So the 32,000 square feet is considered unheated, and the 27,000 square feet is considered heated storage. So we've applied rental rates to all these to get a potential rent of $555,969. Moving further down, we have a vacancy of 3.5% we're applying, 3% expenses, $3.85 as a shortfall. And so we get a net operating income of $512,253, and we have an overall capitalization rate of 6.95%. to get our estimated value of $7,371,000. Moving down to my page 9, you can see our industrial capitalization rate chart. You can see that the 20th, 80th percentiles between 5.55 and 7.45. This is at 6.95, so it falls between the 20th and 80th percentile. A little further down is my addenda. So this is self-storage. It is a little, they do obviously operate differently from normal industrial buildings. We've sort of valued it as a normal industrial building since we don't really have any income for this property. So they have climate controlled and non-climate controlled. You can see in my page 11 there. They're very similar in price. They're showing $88 for non-climate controlled and $96 for climate controlled. So they don't put a very large premium on climate control, it seems, for self-storage, or basically for heated or non-heated properties. And then just moving down onto my page 17, there's a self-storage market view that just kind of some literature on just how good of an investment self-storage is becoming in Canada, and if people are interested in investing in it, as it's one of the fastest growing commercial real estate sectors, they state in this brochure. That being said, so yeah, we feel that the value of $7,371,000 is fair and equitable and should be confirmed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Levenstein. Mr. Neufeld, questions?
I need 30 seconds. I'm sorry. Is that okay?
Sure, 30 seconds. perhaps we can just take a 5-minute recess while Mr. Neufeld is attending to other stuff. Is that okay, Ms. Harlan?
Of course, Madam Chair, I'll take.
Thank you. Then everybody can have 30 seconds.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to call our meeting back to order. Mr. Lobenstein has finished presenting his evidence, and we are now at the point for Mr. Neufeld to ask questions.
Thank you. You mentioned that your pictures are partial development.
Yep.
And so the pad site on, I'm looking at page page 4. So that's a pad site being prepared for another set of buildings, the one to the north.
I'm not too sure. It just looks like a pad site that's being
Yeah.
prepared for one, whether they have permits out or not.
I guess I'm just kind of wondering if your valuation was as done complete, that there's no other expansion planned or in the works.
Well, I mean, they're open and operating that building right now, as I've seen on their website. So I mean, this building is operating. They could have plans for expansion into the future.
Okay. Any open permits?
I haven't checked.
Okay. And this land is on former site of a cement plant, correct?
That's correct.
And of course, you did note that there's an environmental registration, I take it?
I know that at one point that this land was considered contaminated, yes.
It was considered. Oh, are you suggesting that it will ever be not considered to be contaminated?
Well, they are constructing on it, so they very well may have remediated it to construct on it, depending on type of property that was built. But I mean, they got permits to construct, so I would assume that they were allowed to construct on it.
Oh,
Unlike
no,
the
I'm not
last
saying
one.
about permissibility is fine, but you know that registrations never go away, though, don't you? I'm not lecturing you. I apologize for my tone of voice.
I mean, this is zoned M3. M3 does have the ability to have some sort of contamination on it. So
Yeah, and the methodology here of the is applied as the income approach. Then I take it.
that's correct.
Okay. And what's the ceiling height in the buildings?
We have 12 feet for the storage units, and I guess 9 feet for the offices.
And that's an outside measurement.
Yep.
What do you know the clear heights?
No.
Okay. And on page, just looking at the pictures, page 5, is there any semi-trailer access?
Yeah, I mean, I guess off of Nature Parkway, you could drive a semi onto
On the
property.
site? I'm saying semi-trailer access means backing a semi-trailer up to the door and unloading it?
No, I mean, it looks like that. I mean, I guess it's a
no.
possibility, but looks like it'd be difficult. It'd be driving onto the gravel there.
Well, what about loading equipment? Are there docks?
In terms of docks, it just looks like it's like any self-storage place. They just have overhead doors for each particular unit.
And everybody enters at grade?
It would be a grade, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And your comparables, page 6, they're all higher, correct?
Correct.
And any of these have any deficiencies on being able to accommodate semi-trailers?
Not to my knowledge, no.
In the why would the model, I take it this is all done by the model on page 7, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
So how could the model determine these rates of I take it the $10.22 is for the heated space, $8.16 for the unheated space?
Yep.
Isn't there a way that the model distinguishes on industrial sites on their loading capabilities and their ceiling height?
Yeah, so we're doing this. We're looking at this property like it's an industrial property. We don't have an income approach for self-storage. Self-storage obviously has a very different type of income than an industrial property that's leasing out. So we're valuing it similar to how we would value an industrial property.
Right, but don't you have to make some physical modifications, like rent of anything to support unheated space at $8?
Sure, I mean, that's fair. $8 might be a little high for an industrial property. I don't disagree with that. But for this type of property, I would say that they don't seem to really differentiate too much between unheated and heated.
Would a user in the market who's attempting, for example, to rent 1460 Clarence, which is in the sort of in the neighborhood, actually put this as one of his sites that he'd look at to compare to 1460 Clarence? I mean, would the same user be interested in this properity?
Sure,
As
I
Clarence?
totally understand what you're saying. Totally different users. Yeah, they are not the same. But this is how we've decided to value these properties due to the difficulty of getting the income expense information and the fact that they don't sell very often, so it's hard to derive cap rates from these properties. So.
And do you agree that one of the problems with the income information when you get it is that it includes business income?
Well, the business is storage, which is interesting. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess any of the income you do get would be technically business income, right?
Well, a mix, I suppose, a blend of something. That I'm just okay. Sorry, I didn't want. I'm putting words in your mouth. I apologize. Now, in relation to these parameters that are on page 7, how was the 3.5% vacancy decided?
That's just the vacancy for the area that we've applied to industrial properties.
Industrial, okay. And this has nothing to do with the self-storage site style of vacancy then, does it?
No.
Okay. And how about capitalization rate? Is this again based on the industrial?
Yep.
And I'm not trying to test your knowledge of the market, but just a very general question. If you're going out to look for a place to rent self-storage, do you care if the building is new or old?
I guess probably location is the most important factor, I would think, than new or old. If it's close to wherever you're moving your possessions.
Right. And so the target market for people who need to store their possessions, any idea what that might be?
Oh, I mean, I guess I'm gonna say the boomer population because they're downsizing. Might maybe want to store some of their possessions, but I honestly, I don't know.
I don't even know what boomer is, so that's okay.
Us, Mr. Neufeld.
Oh, okay. Why couldn't we have one of those cooler names like Generation X or what are the other ones?
Yeah.
And on pages, I take it to 11 forward. These are the online brochure.
Yep.
And when were these taken?
Just before I submitted my evidence.
Okay, so post reference.
Sure, if you want to call it post reference, sure.
Well, I just want to be clear on it. I'm not being critical of you. I just want the board to have clarified. Because I'm seeing a post-reference rent of $1, so I didn't know you were going to rely on that.
Well, I mean, I think you could see it says for the first month only.
Okay. And they have, and I'm looking on page 15. So they've got outside parking. Not a lot have this, do they?
Self-storage. I mean, I've never used a self-storage facility, but I've driven past quite a few of them. They seem to have open areas where they store boats and RVs and different cars and stuff. So,
okay, but not every self-storage would have the outside parking. I take it outside storage. Oh, okay. This on page 17, it's called a market overview. Would you, I'm just reading it, doesn't it appear to be a sales brochure to invest in this property?
Sure, yeah, it's
Okay.
it talks about the market and the investment and why self-storage has become a good investment within Canada.
Okay. On page 19, point number 4, do you know anything what this means by tax advantaged investment structure?
No, I don't.
Okay. And page point 6, access services, access self-storage. They're part of this group then?
Yep.
On page 20, the point on break-even occupancy rates, you'll note it says here, and I was asking about vacancy earlier, and that bullet point suggests that self-storage has a much higher vacancy rate. Did you see that?
They say a break-even point of approximately 55 to 65% range. So you start making profit after you get
Right.
a tenancy over there. So I mean, that seems fairly good. compared to other
No,
industrial.
but so you're not familiar then about vacancy, a typical vacancy in real estate approach for self-storage then?
No, well, like I mentioned before, where our vacancy is the industrial vacancy for our valuation.
Now I'm just page 21. It's suggesting that the rent that they earn is $371 a square foot.
Mhm.
Okay. Um, and this financial information, I'm looking at this. Is there a province that this is directed at?
I think this is Canada-wide. But I'm not.
Well, I'm looking at page 22. It seems that all their footnotes seem to come from Toronto.
Toronto Star, SNL Financial, the Globe and Mail. Is that the ones you're looking at?
Yeah. I mean, I obviously it's not my evidence, and there's a limit to what I can ask you. I know that it's not based in Winnipeg, but I'm just wondering if you noted that there was a bit of a non that the what they're talking about is for different markets than Manitoba.
Sure, that could be fair. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that.
Okay.
Anything further, Mr. Neufeld?
Yeah, I had found something and I'm difficulty reading it. Page 28, bullet point 3. It says liquidity is expected within 5 to 7 years. Is that typical for a real estate investment?
And that would sound pretty good for a real estate investment, 5 to 7.
Well, you know what that means is you don't get your dividends for 5 to 7 years.
Mhm.
So it's like you buy an apartment, you start earning right away. You don't, in this case, they're saying don't count on it for 5 to 7 years.
That seems like a pretty typical investment.
Okay. Not people I hang around with, but okay. I think that was it. No, thank you. I'm finished. If I miss anything, I got another shot later.
Thank you, Mr. Neufeld. Mr. Purvis, do you have questions for the assessor?
I don't have any questions for the assessor. Thank you.
Ms. Schultz?
No questions, thank you.
I guess my only question, Mr. Lobenstein, is, well, you put it within the industrial category. It's not a typical industrial property at all.
I agree. This is not a typical industrial property. We did put it within the industrial parameters. We feel it best matches up with this type of property. Again, doing it on the income approach, there's not a lot of income, and as Mr. Neufeld stated, some of it is business income, so it's hard to differentiate the two when you do get the income expense mailers. So we've decided that the best course for valuing these types of properties is with the industrial model.
Okay. Are there a lot of these in Winnipeg?
They're growing. I mean, like, define a lot, you know, it's
Yeah.
you're starting to see more of them pop up, I would say, but they seem to be a pretty solid investment.
In your valuation, did you happen to look at the other ones to see their, like, I know there's no income information on this new property, so.
Sure. I mean, I've looked at the income expense mailers of other ones. I can't really speak to it here today. They haven't supplied theirs because obviously they're a new building. So in the future, we will get their income expense mailers and be able to somewhat compare it to how we valued it.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Neufeld.
Thank you. So the whole concept of self-storage is it is a separate real estate segment, and unfortunately the information on it is it's not a broad sector, it's not a large sector, it's been growing, but the way it's done in the market is as a mixed business and real estate return on it, because that's the only form of measurement that they have. So it's not pure real estate, and in terms of valuation, it's probably closest. The principles is closest to a hotel, where there's methods of extracting the business operation from the hotel, and that's theoretically the best way to go. But as of now, the industry standard is still you take joint business and real estate income, and then you figure the cap rate based on that. And so in provinces like Manitoba, of course, we're restricted to real estate only, and that presents the challenge of breaking it down. When I first started working on these, the city did them all on cost approach, and that's how they handled it. But there was a tremendous inequity, because if you had an older building beside a new building, they charge the same rental rates, because the market will only pay the same rate. The market deems them to be homogenous, and then the city was treating them as different values. So one had a competitive advantage. And I think the first time I brought these in, it was about 1920, almost 2020. And sorry, I really have to figure my dates. 2001, 2003. That was roughly when I began working on these. And what we were trying to work with the city on is to come up with a valuation method. What we both ended up doing is switching to the income approach, because at least it was going to treat everybody fairly. And so we've had relative consistency on that basis. Then the next step is, what are your best comparables? Because there are no low ceilinged buildings that rent for purposes like that. There are some one-offs, and there's a couple of retail properties that are inferior, and some industrial properties. The other problem with it is that the type of construction. These things are built with a kit. It's not your typical thing. You put a slab on the ground, you buy the kit, and today's rate, I think the last I heard, it was around $40 a foot. The most expensive part of it are the sprinklers, because you need to have what's called an energized system in the unheated portions so that the pipes don't freeze. And that's the most expensive investment. They have no substantial foundation because they're not bearing any weight. Matter of fact, one of the first ones I did, which was on Salto, it kept having frost jacking because you have to go down further with your piles for stabilization because the building isn't heated, so the piles will freeze and pop up, and there's no weight to hold them down either. And that's one of the, but it's a short-lived construction. These thin-walled steel for for an unheated building, it's just a sheet of steel. And for the heated ones, it's a sandwich plate. Lifespan on them is generally deemed to be 20 to 30 years, and of course, they can be renewed. That's the beauty of it. Is somebody drives into your building, you unscrew that sheet and you put on a new one. So there is an ability to extend your economic life with minor repair. Another feature on them that the model never picks up is common area. And you'll see on my page 1, I've actually written out the common area, the connections, 9,500 square feet. So we call that a gross up. And what it is, it's a percentage of the main building, which in this case is about 20% gross up. So in my office building, for example, we have a 7% gross up, which means that rentable space versus physical space is we're not losing it to common area. Most industrial buildings have 0 gross up. So if you have a rent, that's what it is for the entire building, and there's no extra areas to pay for. So what we could do is, I've included all the space in here because we're treating it like a whole property. But if you're doing unit by unit, you would only be assessing, if you had 60,000 feet and you're comparing it to another 60,000 square foot building, you would have to deal with the gross up on it because it's only 50,000 usable. So what it means is your rent must be 20% lower overall if you're going to use all the space, because nobody is paying for connections in industrial. Those are the flaws. There's always flaws with all of these buildings everywhere in terms of putting a method on. This was what we ended up agreeing to. In terms of vacancy, a healthy vacancy rate for self-storage is 10%. And if you're above that, you build another unit, because you always need space when people come. You never, that's just one of the ways they do business. And you'll see the example I'm showing you later on page 4 was designed exactly that way. As one building filled up, they just added another building and then another building until their lot was full, because you need a healthy vacancy rate. It's part of the business model. But again, we're left with a theoretical method of evaluation on this. And in the first time we did this, I can't do my math, 22 years ago, we came up with we called it a 5 and 3 and 8.5% rule, 5 on the heated and 3 on the unheated and 8.5 cap rate, because we didn't have anything else. What we have managed to find lately is a bit more information on some unheated space that you'll see in my evidence. But the summary on page 1 is the office. First of all, none of these spaces are demisable. So if you have a section, like the assessment department has given you 4 sections, none of them are demisable, which means none of them are separately leasable. We should be looking at a 60,000 square foot building that's got mixed heated and unheated space. Not in a model. Now, the way the model works, if you had done that, the way their system works, it would show you a much different value, because theirs is based on this economy of scale idea. And as you can see from the assessor's page 7, that the little spaces are higher than the big spaces. But essentially, it is one big area. It's impossible to separate it and rent it out, because first of all, the unheated portion, you can't have a toilet in it. So what we did is our blended rate is $332 a square foot, and that's where we are targeting. Now, this one has a feature of outside parking, And our calculation on that, we actually took the post-reference information, which indicated that annual rent for parking would be $540 based on their rack rate. And just taking an expense ratio that's similar to what the city has, we're not going to disagree on their parking rates here. We estimated a net rent of $300 per stall per year, and I counted 260 stalls. So if we're off on that, fine to change that. So that's an annual net income of 78,000, and from the rental operations, a little under 200,000. Vacancy is applied to all of them because if you'll see from the pictures, page 3, for example, there's a pretty high vacancy rate right now with the parking. I think there's 20 cars on a 260 car lot. That was early on. I was out there on Friday, and I think there were about 40 or 50 cars parked in there. So this is not stabilized, but this was stabilized at a higher rate of occupancy. But again, you have to apply vacancy to all of the income. And for the rest of it, the non-recoverables, the structural reserve, we disagree with the city method, but this is not the forum for it. This is a unique property. We have no evidence to tell you one way or another what it should be, because as you just heard me say, there's a mix of costs and expenses. How many of them get categorized as business and how many get categorized as real estate? With lack of evidence, we just accepted their formula. I don't agree with it, but that's what it is. On the shortfall side, well, the greatest cost of shortfall are the property taxes, and here they're extremely high. I think the city, I'm not sure what the city applies, 385. No argument from us. I just put in 4 because there's a guess. The NOI 243 and the cap at 7. The cap rate is not the issue here. Well, it is and it isn't. Like, there's in valuation, the mistake most people make is they think they can take the highest rent and the lowest cap if they're pushing value, or vice versa. You take the lowest rent and the highest cap. You can't have it both ways. You got a problem building, pick your battle. It's going to be a normal cap rate if you account for the income in a manner that deals with the deficiencies, and that's what was done here. And there are deficiencies, of course, from a capitalization rate point, which is building life. You're an investor, and going in, you got this simple construction, and you're going to have a short life. You can have problems with frost jacking. All the operators know it. In this particular case, page 2, we could have accounted for the environmental designation, and this one was for inland cement, and the cement plant was right here. Now, I've tried to research, what possibly is a pollutant in a cement plant. And to be honest with you, I couldn't figure it out, because none of the material they use is considered dangerous. Portland cement might be an irritant, but I couldn't see where it posed a health hazard. So I'm not certified in this. I'm just pointing it out for your information, which is why we didn't push on the cap rate that hard. Now, on the site itself, it's just a very weird thing. Page 4 is the top of it shows the outline of the original lot when inland cement was still there, and you can see that the current site occupies all of the old cement plant area. You can see where the silos are on it. What's very interesting about this is the bottom of page 4 are the lot lines. You'll see that the lot line encompasses the street that's in place, as well as a corridor to Kenaston. And that corridor cannot be hooked up to Kenaston because they already have a connection to Kenaston there. And that's only southbound in out. That's not a northbound access on it. But this is all private land, as most people know, is owned by Terracon, and they hold the entire area, and they chop the pieces up in this. They own the roads, they own the retention ponds, uh, so a part of the land at 15 acres, of course, includes part of the retention pond required in it. So both sides have not made an issue out of that, nor the fact that part of it is the road. We're fine with it, leaving it as it is. The occupancy stats, as I mentioned earlier, this is post-reference. So I only put it in just to illustrate the concept of self-storage, about the idea of what demonstrates a healthy vacancy and what doesn't. And so it's huge vacancies on fill up. And here's where I mentioned the 540 gross, 300 net on the parking. That's post-reference as well. Had nothing else. Page 6 is just Southwest Winnipeg, the number of self-storage locations that are in the area. There is a tipping point for these where this market becomes oversaturated. And Winnipeg is 7 years ago, we were well underserviced by self-storage. Now there's been quite a few going up that we're reaching more of an equilibrium point. And if a few more open up, then there'll be saturation point. And it's not an issue, but there is great studies done on this as to what is saturation point. We're not there. And the question I had asked the assessor was, what's a good location? Well, a good location is where there's lots of apartments, because they don't have room to store stuff. And their particular site, the only apartments that are nearby is there are 7 on Sterling Lion. That's it. Otherwise, there's nothing in the area. Whereas you look at some of the other access centers, the most profitable one I've ever seen is on Monroe Avenue in Elmwood. And that's because all the multifamily tenants, the people who live there, who rent property, that's a good market. But we're not making a point of that. I just wanted to discuss with the board how the market works. Now, the rents that the one that we found, which was really interesting on page 2, and the bottom one is unheated, 30,000 square feet, start date June 2021, 5-year term, 175 net, 40-foot clear height. Tremendous floor loading capability, but it's unheated.
Mr. Neufeld, what page is that on?
2, page, do I have 2 page 2s? Okay, it's the second page 2, 6? 612.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the one with the blue-headed table, and it's about halfway down. It's in bold. The unheated space on Herville. This is probably the only investment grade unheated rent I've seen. There's been a lot of the casual rents, but this one's actually part of an investment property. So if you're going to use a comparable for unheated space, the one I'm showing you is very superior, and it is meant for trucking and industrial. When I was there were 5 stacks high of steel, so it's got weight bearing capability, but it is an unheated rent. Some of the others we have in here are referring to, there's a fair amount of inferior industrial spaces where we have the heights, we've marked them. And most all industrials have heights that are like the concept on industrial ceiling height is always stacking, and a stack is your standard rack is 5 feet high, so everything's in a multiple of 5 plus forklift space on top. So as an example, 1681 Church at 14 feet is 2 pallets high after allowing for the forklift space, and that's how one measures them. This 770 Pandora, at $3 is heated space at 12 feet. So that is maybe 2 racks high, maybe not. And so that's another interesting rent. This was a converted furniture warehouse, furniture assembly warehouse, and this space is heated, a very large space. I'm just pointing out these ones to you, not because I'm pointing out the low rates. I'm just pointing out the ones that are inferior quality for industrial use, because I think we have to steer towards there. The two at the bottom of that, one 1450 Mountain, which was another furniture building that was repurposed, and the rent came to $370, heated space, medium ceiling, 22 feet. The last one is the Eaton's warehouse, older rent, and this is for parking because it had such a low ceiling height that is not much interest to industrial users, but of great interest to parking for the airport, heated parking, and $2 a foot on an 18-foot, and that's heated space. So that's, we're not, again, I'm not looking for the low ones. I'm simply saying is that this is a low quality building. It's going to get a low quality rent. We do not compare assessments, but this page right after that, which is marked page 3, but was really, I guess, the 9th page, is owned by the same person who owns this. This is built the same way. The only difference is that it's doesn't have any land. In this case, because of their zoning, they could not get outside storage, so they developed to the maximum potential for self-storage. It's the same mix of heated and unheated space, the same operator, and we just piggyback the work we had done here on this one, and in that case, the board decided that we were right. Nice hear someone say that every once in a while on dealing with this, because what we basically have is an inferior building that's got a special purpose use, and essentially the improvements contribute very little to the real estate income. I don't know why it's in twice. Oh, anyway. Zoning, the only mention there is that of importance is the fact that with M3, outside storage is permitted, and that's a favorable issue. The rest of the report is not really of any purpose. I'm just, yeah, actually the page marked page 20 this is a workup we did with Colliers, because we do have a self-storage division. Yeah, they're located in Ottawa, and one of my colleagues does most of them in Canada, and these are just some points on self-storage, how the investment grade is good. There's no disputing that, but the quality is low. Or so market supply and demand. I'm reading these wrong. They vary based on the city, and then quality is low, and generally you're looking at 2 to 5 points higher in the cap rate. And after you remove the business income, but again, we didn't bring that in for the board. That was just we're not going to dispute it, so don't waste your time with it, right? Okay, it's the rent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neufeld. Mr. Lobenstein, questions?
Just a few. Just on your first page there, lot size / zoning, you said outside storage is not permitted, but then you're stating they have outside rental income. I'm just a little confused.
Oh, yeah. Well, I have an assistant who did that, put that together, and just as a cut and paste guy, ignore that. Sorry.
All right. So so just to clarify, they are allowed to have outside.
Yeah,
storage.
absolutely. Yeah, it's M3, outside storage permitted, unfenced.
Okay. I just
Or
want to
uncovered.
So in terms of your rents that you have there, and you have the one for unheated, And that would be 555 Hervo, I'm assuming is the address that you're speaking of there.
That's correct.
Uh,
Oh yeah, sorry. I'm not
Okay.
allowed to say, but I guess I already did.
I just want to clarify, because if it is like, so that's a very interesting property. It kind of exists in its own economic ecosystem where it has multiple different tenants from all different types of companies, including lots of owner occupied space. And from my experience, most of those rents are gross rents, not net rents. Would you still rely on that?
Yeah, first of all, just to clarify a couple of points, there's no more owner occupied space except for the management office. Secondly, it was a gross rent, and our office did the calculation on it because we had the cost. The gross is $325 a foot gross.
Right, those are all my questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lobenstein. Ms. Schultz, questions?
No questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Purvis.
I also have no questions.
Okay, thank you. And I have no questions either. Do we have rebuttal evidence on this property?
I have no rebuttal.
Mr. Lobenstein, summation?
I have no summation.
Mr. Neufeld?
Yeah, no rebuttal. And in summation, as with the next one, the assessor and I worked very diligently together to try to resolve this before we brought it to the board. And unfortunately, we couldn't come to an agreement. I think we were really getting close to getting something we could both live with. But again, that's not, we're not, we agreed not to talk about it, other than to say that we had a good discussion. And this is, the whole concept is just difficult because you want to juxtapose one form or another evaluation on a property that doesn't really have an established form of valuation. What I have been personally doing for the last 25 years is saying that this is the best model we got. The assessment department agrees, but there's no such thing as $8 and $10 rents. You can't use a comparable that can hold a semi-trailer. What you have to look for, if you're going to at least attempt to try this method with the income approach, is find inferior space where people aren't going to pay top dollar to unload a truck, because that's where the money is in truck capacity. You want to know what a place is worth? Can you load a semi-trailer there? Can it hold pallets 5 feet high in multiples? Now, there are low-ceilinged industrial around the city. Most of them are small, and nothing is of the size we're looking at. They would be good comparables for the heated portion. As far as the unheated portion is, all I can say, it's got to be less than the heated portion substantially, because if you're renting space to store things, why do you really need an unheated space? Like, what's your competition? It's outside with a tent covering on it, right? So don't have a great market demand for it for most uses. Just that residential user who needs a little bit more secure space. The owner wanted me to tell a joke, and he watches these storage wars and all these findings that people, when they go into that, and all these treasures they get. He said, best thing I ever found was an extension cord with a missing end. But that's what people store. I just trying to put this all in perspective. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. That will conclude item number 4. Sorry, that was item number 4. We can go back to item number 3. This is the same property for a different year. I'm assuming we can make this one quite a bit shorter, because we don't need all the background information on the property. Let's just stick to the valuation. Okay. Mr. Lobenstein.
Sure. The roll number is 100633920. For the 2025 roll year, we have an assessed value of $8,597,000. Again, I've gone through all the property descriptions previously, and same with the map on page 3 and where it's located. So I'm going to move down to my valuation. So again, it's valued very similar to how we did last time. We've broken it up into 4 different premises: the office, the unheated, and the heated spaces. For the 2025 year, we get a potential rent of $628,908. We're now applying a 4.5% vacancy. That is the industrial vacancy, the model industrial vacancy. We have 3% expenses. The shortfall is now $4. And we have a net operating income of $571,685. For 2025, we have a capitalization rate of 6.65%, and that will give us a capitalized value of $8,597,000. On my page 6, these are the comparables. They're the exact same comparables as that we used for 2024. Again, I've gone through those as well. So in terms of everything else in my brief, it is no different. It has the same addenda and the same reports as in the previous one. The only difference was the valuation. So that being said, we feel the assessed value should be confirmed at $8,597,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lobenstein. Mr. Neufeld, questions?
Yeah, most of this, all you're saying was the same, and I'm just wondering if are the comparables also the same?
I believe they are, yeah.
And and you don't have a lot of comparables after 2020, do you? Like, are there any in the model? I'm just wondering. I haven't seen very many this year. Like anything from 22, early 23.
I'm not in this situation. No, I don't. I'm trying to compare this property.
1395 Niagara. Do you have the name of the landlord and the tenant?
No, I didn't provide that. No.
Okay, so they're a client of mine, and dealt with them for 15 years, and it's Winnipeg Elevator, and they're owner occupied. It's a family operation. I'm just wondering if you checked into that.
That would be the first that I've heard of that. It's something that we can definitely look into.
Okay, that's fine. It stuck out my mind. And in the calculation here, your model's calculation, page 7, you've got a higher rent than any of the rents for the heated, higher rent than anything in your comparables. Now, as you're saying, an 8-foot high inside storage with a little sandwich steel panel and no truck loading is worth more than a building with 26 feet clear?
Give me a second here. So we're at $11.88 for the heated, $8.87. I mean, I have clearances at $11.50, $9.50 Niagara, although you said that one.
Right, but it's higher tdon't your highest.
Sure.
Right? That was all I was asking.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the model also looks at the age of the properties as well. So this
no, I don't want to redebate the other things. It was just that this case he went outside limit, and looking at the differences, and the cap rate went down. Is it the assessment department's model's position that cap rates improved from 21 to 23?
Yeah, that's correct. There seems to be some compression in the market.
And what is that based on?
That's based on our model developing cap rates. As you know, we have models that derive our cap rates.
How many investment grade capitalization and sales in the industrial world were completed between April 1st, 21 and April 1st, 23?
In the world? I can't tell you.
No, in Winnipeg.
That I don't know either. I'm sorry.
Any? Were there any?
Any completed? I'm sure there was some. Yeah.
Okay. What do you does your model account for differences in the lending rates in capitalization?
No.
Okay. I don't have much else to ask you here, so don't worry. It's all new. Everything else is the same, right?
Yep.
Okay. And I didn't come up with anything brilliant to say, so don't worry. Okay, those are my questions.
Thank you, Mr. Neufeld. Ms. Schultz, questions?
No questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Purvis?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you, and nor do I. So, Mr. Neufeld?
Sorry, I did notice one thing. And I know it's not a redirect, but
This is an additional question, Mr. Neufeld?
yeah, it's just about the request for information on page 2.
Okay,
Did you get one for 2022?
No, we don't have any. I question if maybe that's connected to the previous property that was there.
You mean like the owner's all of his land in general?
Yeah, I'm not too sure, but yeah, no,
Like
we
that's
never
from
received
Terracon.
anything for this property from what I know.
Okay, okay. Sorry, I missed that. My apologies. Okay.
and I'll just ask the panel members, do you have any questions related to this new line of questioning?
No questions.
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Neufeld.
Yeah, nothing new here, I don't think. Really nothing has changed in the world. As you can guess from the questions I was asking, there's been a real scarcity of sales, 21 to 23. It was a buy and hold period. Sorry, it was a hold period. It wasn't, there weren't a lot of transactions. Page, I'll give you an idea why we say that, page 32. That during this period, well, this is a page that shows the Bank of Canada lending rate, and most market observers were looking at the dates of February and March of 2020 when the rates were around 2%. And then there was a period a year after where the Bank of Canada was trying to help stimulate or save businesses by dropping the main lending rate until about 2022. And by our reference date in April 23, Bank of Canada rate was 4.75%. So this would indicate cap rates went up, not down, from the two periods. And in our business, we knew that that's the case. But the truth of the matter is a cap rate is relatively theoretical, but because transactions were very few in the world, anywhere during COVID, and in industrial, in Winnipeg, it'd be very difficult to find one. What was selling were migrations. So someone who had an office downtown would buy an office in the suburbs, not an investment sale. That was the major transactions happening. Everyone else was anything involving an interest rate was a holding period. We didn't make any changes from our last one because when you have an issue like this, and if the market is saying we're just going to wait and see what happens, well, then we've got to wait and see what happens on our cap rate. So nothing changes on value. I have nothing new to add.
Okay,
Everything else is the same.
thank you, Mr. Neufeld. Mr. Lobenstein.
I have no questions.
Thank you. Mr. Purvis, questions?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Ms. Schultz?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you, and nor do I. So, Mr. Lobenstein, summation?
I have no summation.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld?
As I mentioned on my page 29, you'll see underlined in red what I was saying about cap rates. This is it already. I've already said it, so just to highlight what I was saying is by Q4 2022, this is where the market was sitting, and there's absolutely no reason for an increase in value because nothing moved like this. And the unfortunate thing is, and I'm not saying this in jest, I think the city's model has got a button on it that's stuck at, we got to put in our annual increase because, for 20 years we had it. We didn't in 23. Selected parts of the market showed improvement, and what they were generally those people associated with taking advantage of the work at home and home delivery. That was the increase. That's not self-storage, not office, not retail, but again, it'd be foolish to say it went down when I have nothing to prove it. Nothing changed. And just lastly, we are dealing with a unique type of property. And every year for the last, I'm finally getting my math right, 22 years that I've been going before the board, it's been the same debate. And I'm not telling you anything. I'm not trying to argue and tell you how way you should think, but every year it's been generally, we'll call it split decisions, most in favor of a method that proved equity amongst the property owners. But in the long run, whether it's been board revision or municipal board, there's always been an equilibrium reached, and that is as that the city knows that they have a model and it doesn't work for this type of property, and nobody has the greatest system. What we presented to you is what's held the method evaluation consistently through the times, and it's hypothetical, and we're more than willing to look at a different system were it to come up, a way to splitting that business income out. But as it stands today, that this is the best. I even suggest that in many of these cases, you may even echoing what the assessor said about location, maybe even suggest that the highest and best use of self-storage sites is not the operation, it's likely the land, because the improvements really have no contributory value. And that's likely and when you change your highest and best use and say it is the land, you got to ignore the improvements. That is, as an appraiser, that's probably where I would go for taxation. And I think our number is pretty good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neufeld. Okay, that will conclude item number 3. And I think that means, Mr. Neufeld, you are done for the morning.
With you, yes.
Yes.
I have other
Okay.
other demons to deal with.
Other demons. Okay. All right. Well, I'd like to
Thank you very much.
Thank
you,
Mr.
Stephen.
Neufeld.
Take care.
Yeah.
I'd like to propose a 10-minute recess, give Mr. Smith a chance to get organized, and then we'll proceed with item number 5 on our agenda. So 10 minutes, please.
11:15.
11:15. Thank you very much. I'd like to call our meeting back to order. Before we begin, Mrs. Harlan, can you please affirm Mr. Smith's testimony?
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you for standing. Would you please state your full name?
Trevor Smith.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please be seated.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on with our agenda on item number 5. This is file number 25-47. It's an appeal for 2024. Property address is 277 Hutching Street. And Mr. Smith, I just need to confirm this is an appeal of the assessed value.
That's correct.
Hey, thank you. Mr. Lobenstein, when you're ready, please.
Sure. We have a roll number that's 14064040700 277 Hutching Street. This is for the roll year 2024 with a reference date of April 1st, 2021. We have assessed value of $3,788,000. To the property descriptions, we got 2 buildings and 2 premises on this property. We have 2 stories on one of the buildings. The actual years built is 1970 to 2024. We have an effective year built of 2004 with wall heights ranging from 9 feet to 30 feet. We have a zoning of N2 manufacturing and a land area, general manufacturing, and a land area of 111,439 square feet. We have a plan area of 31,891 square feet and a gross floor and leasable area of 35,170 square feet with a land to plan of 3.49. Going down to my page 2, you can see that there was an old sale from 2009 and there was a lease in place as of 2012 for a lease term of almost 10 years for 20,000 square feet at $7.67 a square foot. for this property. So we're here for a addition to a property. That's a supplemental assessment today. So the addition was 6,300 square feet. If you go to my page 9, wait till you're all there, then you can see the outside. You can see the main building where the red dot is, and there's like a gray roofed area. That would be the addition to the property. So that is the 6,300 square feet. And again, on my page 9, I can give you another look at the subject property. And on page 10, you can kind of see the two properties, or the two buildings on the property. There's also a fenced-in storage area as well. Then on my page 8, you can also see the location on page 8 in the map. It's just off Inkster, kind of near Dunlop, and so that would be sort of the Inkster Industrial Park area, close to that area. So heading back up to my rent comparables on my page 3, these rent comparables are all from the market. They're all net rents. They're used to build our models. So we're looking at properties that range from 30 or 26,000 square feet all the way up to 35,000 square feet. The wall heights range from as low as 12 feet all the way up to 26 feet, and the effective years built range from 1964 to 1961 to 1984. The locations are fairly close to the subject property. They're on Bunting, St. James, Century, Mountain, Notre Dame, and Keewatin. The two furthest ones would be the Century and St. James ones, but Bunting, Mountain, Notre Dame, and Keewatin would be fairly close to the subject property. And you can see the net rents range from $6.25 a square foot all the way up to $7.95 a square foot. Scrolling down to my page 4. So the leasable area is, we have two different buildings, as you can see on there. One is 27,100 square feet and the other one is 8,070 square feet. We have a rent of $6.78 on the 27,000 and $6.18 on the 8,000 square foot. We have a potential rent of $233,611. We're applying the 4% vacancy, 3% expenses, and $3.85 per square foot for the shortfall to get our net operating income of $212,123. And then we apply our capitalization rate of 5.6% to get our estimated value of $3,788,000. Again, on my page 6, there's a capitalization rate chart ranging from 5.5 to 7.45. So you can see that this property does fall between the 20th and the 80th percentile, where the majority of industrial properties fall within our market. Scrolling down, there is an income and expense mailer. So on my page 11, you can see that they've checked off that it's partially owner occupied. So there's a tenant in one part of the property and the owner occupies another part of the property. You can see they have supplied the expenses for the property. That being said, when we scroll down to the tenant list on page 13, you can see the two. You can see the owner occupied and the tenanted part. The tenanted part in this situation is the 20,000 over 20,000 square feet. It looks like. Hang on, to zoom in a little bit. Yeah, they're 20,952 square feet. So this would have been before the addition was put in, and then the owner occupies the rest of the space, as we can see. That being said, I feel that this property should be confirmed at $3,788,000. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Laubenstein. Mr. Smith, questions?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a few. Given workload at the city, have you had a chance to inspect this property?
No, we have not had a chance to inspect this property.
Okay, so looking at the wall height indicated on the front of your brief there, it says 9 to 30 feet, and I've check this out on the city's online information for the property. So the 9-foot refers to the office building built for the owner, right? The Contempra Steel owner.
Yeah, I believe that would be
2 floors, so 2 floors of 9 plus feet.
Yep.
The older 1970 building, the original industrial building on site, that has a 20-foot wall height, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
And then it's indicating that the new portion of the property has a 30-foot wall height, correct?
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, so if we then flip to your page 10 and look at the photographs, there is no difference in height between the 2 portions of the building, correct?
That's correct. They're the same.
Okay, so then it would be a 20-foot exterior wall height. Would that that would have an impact on the rental rates that the model would project for the property, would it not, as well as some other factors?
Slight impact. Yep.
Well, a 10-foot increase in stacking height would be quite significant as far as the rent that one could achieve on the market, correct?
That's correct. Yep.
All right. I believe my rent is actually in this case for 2024 slightly higher than the city, so I won't delve into that. Looking at the page 11, the income and expenses, 11, 12, and 13. So it indicates that the income type is gross, correct?
They state that, but then they're showing recoveries. So
right. So if we then move forward to, and I agree with you, if we then move forward to page 13, it's actually a semi-gross situation, correct? If you go through what is actually paid by the tenant, they're not paying a $7.67 per square foot net rental rate, right? They're paying significantly less than that.
Second here.
In that and they've got it marked off incorrectly here, but they are paying for insurance, a slight annual admin recovery, and a slight annual utilities, but none of the rest of the expenses, including property taxes.
I'm sorry, just going by what's on my page 13. It's showing recoveries for property taxes, general admin recoveries, and recoveries for maintenance. So
right. So if we go back, and I know this is on the spot, and I don't mean to put you on the spot here. That's not the intent, but that's how our system works. We look at page 13. The property tax recovery indicated as $45,113. If you go back to page 11, the insurance is $45,113. So I would suggest that that is a mistake in entry on the property owner's part in putting it in. The balance, as you can see, you're looking at about $9,500 in recoveries, and our overall expenses were $150,000, the bulk of which would be the main tenant and not the owner occupied portion, which is only got quite how large it is. The owner occupied portion would be in the neighborhood of 12,000. Well, I'll figure here somewhere. Anyway, significantly smaller, correct?
sorry, you just lost me for a second there. Can you?
Yes, I may have lost myself. I apologize for that.
Good, it's not just me.
The point being the recoveries that they're getting are only a very small portion of what the actual expenses are for the property, right? So the 767 stated rent is not net and would be well under that, correct?
Well, I mean, so I don't know if we well under it because the majority of the property is tenanted, correct? So they would have the majority of the expenses.
Well, if you look at the expenses that are indicated, the recovery that they're paying is 113, 4,067, and annual utilities of 5,400. So you're looking in the neighborhood of, call it 55,000 rounded on total expenses of 150,000, so about a third. Whereas they make up more in the neighborhood of bear with me for a moment. 27,252 out of 35,000. So whatever the math on that is, call it 70+% of the property.
Okay, so property taxes, they're recovering 45,113 of the 67,479.
Well, as I stated, they're not. That's an incorrect entry. They're paying for the insurance is what they're doing. If you compare the notes, and I did confirm this with the owner, that they are they cover or rather the tenant is paying for the insurance
Okay.
for their business.
But they have another line item, 116, insurance recovery 4149. So, and then
I'm sorry?
the other line item here. So looking on the left-hand column of the income expense mailer, line item 116, insurance recovery, it states is written in there. It says 4,149. And then they have below that general admission recoveries is 4,067. Utilities and maintenance is 5,400, and then property tax recovery is 45,113. So I'm just confused because you're saying that's insurance recovery, but they've already stated that in there.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to figure this out. I'm just a little confused. Because yeah, I can see what they've done at the top
it
here as
was
well.
confusing.
Go ahead.
So
Sorry, go ahead.
can we agree? And yes, I see your point, and I did go through it with the owner, and it is confusing. It was confusing to them, which is why they make errors on these sheets. And we agree that the rent stated is not a net rent, and that the actual it is a semi-gross rent, and that the actual property owner receives less than the 767 on a net basis.
Okay.
Okay. Skipping forward then to capitalization rate, this will be our main point of contention for both 2024 and 2025. So the city has a cap rate of 5.6% on the subject property. And when I look at the industrial category in the city cap rate chart on page number 6, we're looking at a 20th percentile of 5.55 up to 7.45 at the 80th percent. So in that standard window, you're at the very bottom of the market for this subject property, correct? You're like 0.5 higher.
Yeah.
Okay. The new portion of the subject building built in 2024 amounts to 17.9% of the property. The balance of it being built in 1970, with the exception of the owner occupied building, which is their own office building essentially, which they built in 2011. I'm a bit baffled by why the model would project at the very bottom end of the range for a property such as this.
As you can see, the models put an effective year of it at 2004. So that would be a big driving force as to why we've come up with this cap rate. On top of that, the area, sort of the Inkster area for industrial properties is a good area to be in. It's Inkster Industrial Park, so the area is good. And also on top of that, as you stated, there is a 2011 build, a 2024 build, and a 1970 build. So as I stated, it's fairly recent. And at approximately, I guess, 35,000 square feet, it's not overly large for industrial standards. So smaller buildings usually have somewhat smaller cap rates.
Okay, so just getting into one piece of information there. So the 2011 build, that is the office building, correct?
Well, it's got the office, and then it also, if you look on the picture, it has an overhead door.
Yeah, I've inspected it, and it does have a portion of the building, but a smaller portion of the building that is industrial, in that they do some unloading in there.
Yep.
The is there a lot of call or is there a lot of development of office buildings in Inkster Industrial Park?
I mean, every industrial building has a portion that's
Well, they
office.
do,
There's-
but as a standalone office, are there a lot of are there a lot of office buildings?
Well, actually, interesting. There was one across the street that was an industrial building that got transformed into mostly office with some warehouse in the back. I mean, it's not common, but it does happen.
Okay, I will leave it at that. I'll get into it in my presentation. Looking at the cap rates, again, on that chart on page 6. The major market participants are giving ranges of 6.6 to 6.75%, 6.5 to 7.25%, and 6.25 to 6.75% for industrial B class properties, which is what this property would be. Again, I'm just curious as to why the city is so far under what the market is.
Sure. I mean,
cap rates are.
the city, we're mandated to value all properties. These ones look at very specific types of properties, ones that they feel are investment grade, if you will. So in our estimation, that this property falls into, it still falls between the 20th and the 80th percentile, where the majority of properties fall for our model. So yes, we are on the lower end, but as we spoke about, this one has been has had extensive additions to it in 2011 and 2024.
Okay, those are all of my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Purvis, questions for the assessor?
Let me see if I can find it. I think it might have been answered. Just 1 second. Yeah, my question has been answered already. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Schultz?
No questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. My focus was on the cap rate, and I do note, Mr. Lobenstein, that your cap rate is lower than the real estate reports, all of them. But you've indicated it's because the effective year built has been brought up to 2004, right?
Yeah, that would be a major driver. Yep.
And so the location, and you say the size.
Yep.
And what are the size breakdowns for cap rates typically?
Oh, I don't have that exactly for you, but I can say, like, when you're looking at buildings that are getting higher in square footage, and you're looking at 80, 90, over 100,000 square foot, the idea is that the risk of that is definitely higher. So you'd be looking at a higher cap rate for that. There's less tenants that are willing to rent out a building of that size. A lot of them are usually single tenanted. It's hard to make those into multi-tenanted buildings. It's very expensive to do that. So we understand that very large size industrial properties would drive a higher cap rate. When you're looking at the 30,000 square foot range, there are quite a few. There's a larger stock of buildings in Winnipeg that have that size. And there's a larger stock because there's more capacity to use them. There's more types of businesses that want to use them, that have the ability to function in those properties. And so that's why you'd see a lower cap rate.
Okay, and what is the square footage of the office portion?
I don't have the exact breakdown here, unfortunately. There's, as you can see, that one property, the one that's built closest to Hutching there, it looks like it's about half the size of the building. So that building is 6,591 square feet. So the office is probably around 3,500, 4,000 square feet would be my guess.
Okay. Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Lobenstein. Mr. Smith?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So Subject property 277 Hutchings Street. So it's an oddball. The property owner, who is the owner of Contempora Steel Builders, purchased the property and erected the office building on site for themselves. There is a you look at the photos, my photos begin on page number 4. Looking at, I'll just familiarize yourself with the property to start with. I guess the top photo is taken from Inkster itself. So on the right-hand side of that photo is the office building. On the left-hand side is the industrial building. So that's the tenanted portion. And we get to the bottom of page 4. And you have the office building there from the exterior. Get to the back of that office building at page number 5. Now, if you look at the photo, it looks like that section with the overhead door is a larger portion of the building. It's not. The actual office extends into the back portion of the building. If you see that tall window at the rear of the property, that is still office building. It's 2 stories in height. So you can see bottom of page 5 is the office. That's what it looks like inside. And then you have a single truck bay at the back at the bottom of page number 6. So it's not that whole back section of the building. It's actually a limited portion of it. I don't have the breakout of what that bay is in relation to the overall office building. However, the overall office building is 7,918 square feet, which forms 22% of the overall leasable area of the property as a whole. So if you have, call it a quarter of that being that office bay, you're looking in the neighborhood of I don't know, call it 7 or 8%, somewhere in that range, being that portion of the property. Moving on to the industrial portion. So there's a photo at bottom of page 7 shows the exterior court. And a bit of the front of the building where the loading is. They have somewhat limited loading, as you can see at the top of page 8. They've got a couple of bays there. And then at the bottom of page number 8, you can see where the addition has been tacked onto the Inkster frontage, and how it was constructed, as well as the level roof line with the existing 1970 building. So the 1970 building has a 20-foot exterior wall height. Stands to reason, so does the new 6,300 square foot addition, which is the total size of the addition to the property. So the total addition is 18%, 17.9% of the overall leasable area of the property. So yes, it's new, but it's not a 30-foot well accessible warehouse that can be leased out to other tenancies, etc. With loading, it's simply an addition to the existing tenancy that's on site. So if you look at page number 9, you get into that building itself and the existing building. The existing building, being built in 1970, is wood frame. The new one is steel. Obviously a difference there. You can see that in the photos of the roof as well. And the addition, rather than being wide open span, what they have done is cut 2 openings in the existing cinder block construction in order to allow pass through. So obviously that's not ideal from a workflow perspective. So that is the property that we're looking at. If you think about it logically, looking at that office building, there's not a lot of call for office in Inkster Industrial Park. Certainly that amount of office, you would certainly struggle to find a tenant of that size to take on an office space at a rate that would justify putting a tenant in. The demand is simply not there. I'd also point out, as you go out Main Street towards Inkster, there's significantly less office space than there is in other areas of the city. There's just less demand in that sector of the city than there is overall. So that's a bit of background. Let's go back to my page number 2. I realize I'm jumping around a bit here, but I wanted to cover that off to start with. We have our supplemental assessment at $3,788,000. Property built in 3 stages, really, 1970, then 2011 for the office portion, and then 2024 for the 6,300 square foot addition. Moving forward to the valuation itself, as I stated, I believe the rents that we have assigned to the property based on our market data are under what the city has ascribed to it. If you look at the tenant themselves, they are actually in on a semi-gross basis. I've confirmed the details with the property owner, and the amount that they pay is significantly under the $767. I've given you a chart with rates on it there. As we are under what the city is considering, I'm not going to run through them in detail. However, you can see the rental rates that we're looking at range between kind of that lower end of call it $5 a square foot up to $6 per square foot. For the subject property, given the slight new addition, we have assigned a rental rate of $6.25 a square foot to the tenanted area. And to the office area, we've assigned a rental rate of $9.50 a square foot. Now, we're not going to find comps for the office portion in the immediate area because they don't exist really. So what we've given you is just a chart from the relevant time frame from Cushman and Wakefield. If you look at Class C suburban, they're looking at rates at $13 and often below $13, frankly. So we've assigned a rental rate of $9.50 a square foot. $13 would never be achieved for a standalone office in a location such as this. So that's where our potential income comes from. Let's jump forward to vacancy. And we've given you our vacancy chart, both for industrial and office at the top of the page here. Looking at investment vacancy, as of the valuation date, you're looking at 7.6%, according to the Johnson report for Winnipeg overall, 9.9% in Inkster Park, indicating greater vacancy. Single tenant vacancy, 7.4%, overall 5.9% in Inkster Park. If you average that out over 5 years, it's 8% and 7.4%. Multi-tenant being somewhat higher than that. The office stats are at the bottom. I would point you to the Class C suburban, which would be the closest approximation here. And you'd be looking at 9.4% from Cushman, 17% from Collier's, and 5% from the Johnson report. It's difficult to put a number on this, but obviously it's going to be higher than the city's estimate. So we've considered the fact that there's an owner occupant in a portion of the property with a longer term tenant and assigned a rate of 6% to the property overall. The expense allowance, I'm not going to delve into this. You've all heard extensively about it. All of the detail is there for you to review. The city's rate does not take into account expense categories that should be taken into account. So we use an overall non-recoverable rate of 5% in our analysis. And finally, we can jump forward to cap rate. I would point out that the city is simply providing a chart. They haven't provided any detail with regard to individual transactions. So there's nothing in particular to look at to determine whether that's a fair representation of a cap rate for the subject. Looking at my page number 25, if you look at two of the main market commercial brokers, we have Colliers and CB Richard Ellis. Colliers having overall capitalization rate range of 6 to 6.75% for industrial, and CB Richard Ellis indicating 6% to 7.25% for investment grade industrial assets. Now, the subject would be an investment grade industrial asset. It does have a tenant. And is of a size that's leasable in an industrial park, so it would fall within that that Class B categorization. Following that, we have individual cap rates from the relevant time frame and slightly before. You can see the ranges that we're looking at there. From a low end of about 6.5%, 6.6%. Up towards 8%, 7.8% for a property in the M3 zoned Mission area of St. Boniface, heavier industrial area. The balance of the cap rates are typically in that 7 to 7.5% range. Following that, I've given you photos and maps to indicate what these properties are, where they're located, and comparability to the subject. So we have one in Inkster Park, 78 Hutchings, transacting at 7.2%. Now that's a little bit dated and would probably change. However, that is a superior property to the subject overall. As would be the Gates property. Now, jumping forward to our summary of the valuation. I'm going to make a slight adjustment here in the city's favor. I have changed our capitalization rate downwards from 7.25% to 7%. In hindsight, looking at our presentations from this cycle, the board's decisions, and additional market information that we've had a chance to look at, 7%, which is well within the range of the market participants and the cap rates we presented, is a fair representation of the subject and does capture the newness of the addition, location in Inkster Industrial, etc. So if you use 7% as the cap rate, that gives us a final rounded value of $3,016,000. And that is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Lobenstein, questions for Mr. Smith?
Yeah, just on your page 25, I know you already adjusted your cap rate. I guess my only question is that the sales dates of a lot of these are 2016, 2017, and 2019. Since those have sold, would you agree that there's been some compression in cap rates within the market in Winnipeg and that they've lowered?
Yes, I would agree. There has been some compression. So we did not have a lot of data in that immediate window leading up to the valuation date. But again, if you look at the cap rate ranges for top tier investment grade industrial assets from the main commercial brokerages. They bracket essentially what we're saying, or slightly under what we're saying. So that's why we've adjusted the cap rate to 7%, which again matches the decisions that we're receiving in this cycle. Thank you.
Yep, those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lobenstein. Mr. Purvis, questions?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Schultz?
No questions at this time, thank you.
Thank you very much. I have no questions. Is there any rebuttal evidence from either of you?
I have no rebuttal.
I have no rebuttal.
Thank you. Mr. Lobenstein, would you care for a summary?
I have no summation.
Thank you. How about you, Mr. Smith?
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Then that will conclude item number 5. Item number 6 is file number 25-48. This is for the year 2025 to 77 Hutchings Street, same property as previous. So we could probably, unless there's any new information you'd like to bring forward, we probably don't need to focus a lot on the background of the property. But if you, yeah, go ahead, Mr. Lobenstein.
Sure. The roll number is 140640407000277 Hutchings. The roll year is 2025 with a reference period of April 1st, 2023. We have assessed value of $5,662,000. Again, I'll just go right to my evaluation on page 4. The leasable areas are the same. We have rental rates of $859 and $816 for a potential rent of $298, $640. For 2025, we apply a 3.5% vacancy, 3% expenses, and a $4 shortfall. We now have a 4.85 capitalization rate on it. Apply that to the net operating income, and we get our value of $5,662,000 rounded. On page 3, you can see the comparables. Again, they range from $9.68 as a high, down to $7.75 for a low. So everything else within this brief is the same as the last one. Nothing has changed. I guess the only thing that has changed would be the capitalization rates on page 6. The 20th to the 80th percentiles between 5.35 and 7.3. So in this situation, the capitalization rate of 4.85 does fall out of the 20th to the 80th percentile. Aside from that, everything is the same. The income expense mailers starts on page 12. And yeah, so we feel this value should be confirmed to $5,662,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lobenstein. Mr. Smith, questions?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So we have back-to-back supplementals here. The last one was from 2024. This is the new cycle, 2025. The rental rate the city has applied in the last cycle was $664 overall. It's now $849. Is there anything that would point us towards a nearly $2 per square foot increase in rent for the subject?
The market's gone up. Properties are renting for more, so it would definitely change the rental rate.
So we'd be looking at it's about a third essentially what we're looking at. So we're looking at an increase of 35% in rental rates over that time span, 2-year time span.
That's what we're showing here. Yep.
Okay, and so let's look at the comparables then. Your rental rate for the tenanted portion is $8.59 a square foot. Comparables are on page 3. So first property, 89 Bunting Street. That's in Inkster, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Wall height there is not actually 12 feet, correct? That's just the 1 floor office portion. It's actually 22 feet. correct?
We'll check that.
I did confirm it on the property attributes for the property.
Four thousands at 12 feet, 35,000s at 24 feet.
So 24 feet.
Yeah.
Okay, so 24 foot for the majority of the building.
Yep.
Okay. And the subject is 20 feet?
That's correct.
Okay. 1695 Sergeant, that is in the Polo Park area on Route 90, correct? Century at Sergeant?
That's Century and Sergeant, yep.
Okay, and the tenancy there, Robertson solid stone granite countertops, that's essentially a retail warehouse, correct?
Well, it's a warehouse. They probably have a retail portion in there, as many warehouses do.
Well, having, okay. No, I can't leave it at that. So it's not a large warehouse with a small showroom or anything, correct? It's mainly a showroom of products, correct?
I've actually inspected this property quite a few times. There is a large showroom area, but there's also a large storage area in the back for the products and such.
Okay, so that would impact the rent in an upwards direction, correct?
In terms of the fit
More
up,
of a retail, more of a retail location.
sure. I'll say it's more of a retail location. That's fine. Yeah.
Okay, and similarly, 1451 St. James Street, that's also in the Polo Park area, correct?
Yep.
And 1199 St. James Street, similar to 1695 Sergeant, this is a retail tenancy as well, correct? The ensuite, which is bath, kitchen, lighting.
Yeah. Again, these are sort of like industrial properties with retail components with them.
And again, the majority of that property would be devoted to the showroom, correct? With storage of their product.
That I can't say. I don't usually find these ones typically have more showroom than warehouse. Usually the warehouse is the larger component, but in this situation, there is probably a retail component to it.
Okay. And let's move forward then to capitalization rate. So, yeah. And again, this is not to do with yourself, but the capitalization rate assigned by, I'm assuming this is model driven.
Yeah, this is model driven.
So 4.85%. We're looking at a cap rate under 5% here.
Yep.
Do you frequently, or have you ever seen a capitalization rate below 5% for an industrial property?
Yeah, we do cap rate studies. We review cap rates within the market. There are cap rates that do fall below 5%.
Okay, so this would be the absolute best of the best, essentially, is what we're looking at here.
Yeah, it's a good property.
But okay, well, so let's look at the chart on page 6 then. So the industrial range 20th to 80th is 5.35 to 7.3%. 4.85 falls a half 0.5% below the standard range. I mean,
Sorry,
I
Trevor,
don't know what to say about this. 4.85% stands out. Like I would assume that this would be something that would get adjusted when it comes out from the model, in that it would kind of be red flagged as, hey, this should probably have a second look at it. Is that not fair to say?
I lost the beginning of your question there. I'm sorry. Can you just ask it again?
Sure, I'll ask the last portion. When a cap rate that's so divergent from the norm comes out, wouldn't it be standard for the city's assessment model to red flag that, to have a second look at whether this is an appropriate cap rate or not?
So it's not so much the cap rate we look at. We look at the values when they come out, and we look for any abnormalities in terms of the values at times, and those are the ones we'll review. Sometimes that could be because of the cap rate, sometimes that could be because of the rent. In this situation, this is a supplementary that went out. I guess when they put it in, they looked at the value and they felt it was a fair value that went out.
So again, looking at that cap rate chart, if we look at the industrial sections of Collier, CBRE, and Cushman Wakefield, if anything, they've gone up slightly. We're looking at 6 to 7, 6.5 to 7.5, and 6 to 6.75%. Typically, commercial brokers are in the optimism business. Is there anything that would point towards this being so far below the standard range of investment cap rates in the city?
And I could just speak to it as I spoke to it before. We're mandated to review all properties. The agencies here you're speaking of will review very specific types of properties to find these cap rates. So, I mean, in our model, how we've developed our model, this is the cap rate it produced.
Okay. And again, still on that cap rate chart. So multifamily is acknowledged by all parties to be the safest, essentially safest investment category of investment properties. They're looking at a low end there for the 20th percentile, 4.75. So we're almost at the best capitalization rate for multifamily properties here. Again, does that not cause some dissonance?
Okay, I'll speak to two things here. I don't know what's considered the safest or not the safest. I'm just working in the industrial market here. Within these markets, yeah, this is very close to the lower end of multifamily. I can see that, but industrial properties are very, very different from multifamily is all I'll say.
I would agree with that. Okay, thank you. That's all of my questions.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Purvis, questions?
I'm sorry, it took me a long time to unmute. I couldn't find the button. I don't have any questions at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Schultz.
No questions at this time, thank you.
Okay, and nor do I have questions. So, Mr. Smith.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So just to put it in perspective, so we're looking at nearly a $2 increase in rental rate, call it 30, at 1/3%, 33% increase, essentially in rental rate over a 2-year period. Has the market gone up as far as rental rates go in that time? Yes. Has it gone up that dramatically? No, it really has not. There's nothing to indicate that a property would jump like that. Second point, so that should be a red flag to start with. Second point is a capitalization rate of 4.85%, and I'm struggling to find the words for it, is not going to occur either on this property or on any standard investment grade property that I've seen in our marketplace. If you have a 40-year lease with the government of Canada on a triple net basis with steps increasing over time, maybe, but you're essentially buying a bond at that point, right? The safety is, absolute. There is no downside for you there whatsoever. Those situations don't exist. What we have is the standard marketplace here. We have tenants that come and go. We have vacancy that happens. Tenants go dark. Issues happen with financing with regard to rates going up and down, etc. All of these things drive overall capitalization rates. And as shown by both the city's chart, where the standard market participants in commercial brokerages are indicating ranges of 6 to 7% plus, 6 to 7.5% overall. There is no indication that we're looking at a situation for the subject property, whether a portion of it is newly built or not, that would drive a cap rate of 4.85%. So if we look at my page number 3, looking at the 2024 SUP that we just heard, which we're disputing the value of, we had a assessed value of $3,788,000. We now have an increase of 49.5% over 2 years to $5,662,000. It's just not appropriate, and it doesn't reflect the market. All of the other details here do remain the same. The difference that we're looking at is we're 2 years forward in time. So we do need to account for any changes that that you would see in the market as far as rent, as far as vacancy, and as far as cap rate go. So we've done so. Looking at my page 17, we can look at the rental comparables that we have. Again, we have property here built in 1970 with a 20-foot wall height. Yes, we have the 2024 edition, also with a 20-foot wall height, only forming 18% of the overall property, with an anomalous office building essentially on site as well, with a low marketability. So let's look at the comps. We have a range here, again, in that $6 to $7 plus per square foot range. We're looking at a tenanted space of 20,952 square feet, and then the office building of just under 8,000 square feet. So we're looking for tenants in that range. You can see that our leases range from 13,000, 16,000, 18, 20,000, with a couple that are a little bit higher than that. Most of our rents are within that nearer time frame. Certainly the first 4 are. 25 Paquin is 2017 lease, so a little bit older, $6 a square foot for a beautiful building in St. Boniface Industrial Park. 1988, 20-foot wall height, 5-year term. 1000 King Edward, which is, pardon me, a redevelopment of the full redevelopment of the Safeway Safeway warehouse on King Edward, 2020 lease, at $5.60 a square foot for 40,000 square feet. So somewhat larger. Obviously, the rent would go up from that range of $5.60, but we are close in time there. 560 Shepherd in Inkster, $6.75 a square foot for 16,000 square feet. Very similar, superior wall height, 2024, or rather 24-foot exterior wall height. 2022 lease at 5 years. And finally, 1725 St. James, 2020 lease there, $7.75 for a smaller area, 13,876 for a superior building, built in 1999, 28-foot wall height. That is the redevelopment long time ago of the brewery at the north end of St. James, one of the premier properties in the city. So that's at $7.75 a square foot for a comparable area, but a superior building. The photos on the following pages give you an indication of what those properties are. You can see what 1725 St. James is there, as well as the remainder of the properties. Following that, I give you comps with regard to office space. These are all, or not all of them, but many of them are suburban, and they point to that range in the $10 to $11, 11 plus per square foot range typically. The newer leases are showing the exact same figures, and our properties that are good properties for comparison as well. We're looking at 10, 15, and $11 a square foot. So same situation. Yes, we've bumped the rate, reflecting increases in the market from $6.50 to $7 a square foot. We've also increased the rate on the office space to $10 a square foot. This gives us an overall rate of $7.68 per square foot. If you'll recall, our rate for the previous cycle was slightly below the subject, or rather the city's projection. Now we're significantly under, despite having increased the rates to reflect market. Let's jump forward. Vacancy. I'm not going to run through it point by point. If you look at the industrial investment vacancy up there, you can see investment vacancy 4.8%, 2.5% in Inkster Park. If you take that out to a more normal average over 5 years, it's 6.7 and 7.7%. And then we have the office stats at the bottom, Class C suburban 10.3 to 5.5%. We're asking for an overall vacancy rate of 4.5%. Jump forward, we have the same issue with regard to the expense allowance, same as last time. The shortfall we're in agreement with, and we can jump forward to cap rate. Please disregard the last sentence of the first paragraph. That was meant to be deleted and refers to another property. If we look at the main commercial brokerages here again, 6 to 7% for industrial class A properties for Colliers, and 6.5 to 7.5% for industrial class B properties. Now, class A properties are similar to that 1725 St. James Street property, the redevelopment of the brewery there. Flip back, you can see the photo of it. It's high cube, modern flex warehouse space that can be used for industrial and or office with good loading, excellent access, all of the points that would drive the highest rental rates, the lowest vacancy, and most tenant interest. So that would be what we're looking at for industrial class A. Class B is where the subject falls. We give you 6 different transactions in the marketplace, as was mentioned by an earlier appellant. Sales essentially stopped in 2022 due to the significant jump in capitalization rates, or rather significant jump in the Bank of Canada interest rates, which have obviously a direct impact on mortgage lending rates. If you look at the bottom of the page there, Bank of Canada interest rates rose from 0.5% in spring of 2022 to 1 year later, 4.75% as of the valuation date, April 1, 2023. Now that's a 4.25% increase. Now it's not a one-to-one translation where cap rates go up 4% just because interest rates did, but there is a standard correlation that as interest rates rise, so do cap rates. It's obviously very logical. If your cost to borrow increases and your revenue does not change, which it wouldn't, then your return decreases. So obviously capitalization rates will increase on that basis. The actual transactions shown from that prior period of 2021, 2022 typically are showing in that 6.1, 6.2, 6.4, 6.5 range, one at 8.7%. So all things being equal, we're not going to see transactions dropping, certainly from this range that we're looking at in that 2021, 2022, early 2022 timeframe. as of the valuation date. If anything, we're going to see increases. What I have done is look at what those ranges were immediately prior to it and apply an appropriate cap rate, which in this case is 6.5%. Now, yes, I have decreased from the prior cycle, but that again is based on the 2021, early 2022 information. If you factor in the rise in interest rates, could I have stayed at 7%? Yes, perhaps I could have, but we have acknowledged that earlier history of transactions, and we've used a rate of 6.5%, which is both well within our cap rate range, given the chart, as well as the range of the major market participant Colliers for industrial class B. In fact, we're at the bottom end of the range at 6.5%. So this is summarized on page 25. You look at our chart there, you can see our rental rate of 768, which we have bumped up from the last cycle compared to the city at 849. The market stats are indicating higher vacancy than 4.5. However, we have a single tenant with an owner occupant. We acknowledge that. So we're only asking for 4.5%. The expense allowance is what it is, and the cap rate of 6.5%, we're at the sharp end or the aggressive end of cap rates for properties such as this at that point in time, given the market evidence. So our overall valuation comes to $3,670,000, and that is my evidence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Lobenstein, questions?
I have no questions.
Thank you. Ms. Schultz?
No questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Purvis?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and nor do I have questions. Mr. Lobenstein, summation?
I have no summation.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, summation?
I have no summation. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, then that will conclude item number 6. And with that, we have heard all items on our agenda, and this hearing is now adjourned. Thank you, Mr. Lobenstein, and thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks.
Madam Chair, I'll go take us offline.
Thank you very much.